It's Ivy Slater, and you're listening to Her Success Story podcast, a show where gutsy businesswomen share their success journey. Hi, this is Ivy Slater. Welcome to today's episode of Her Success Story. For those of you who are just tuning in, welcome, and welcome to one of my favorite times a year, which is when we do our nonprofit series. I decided from the very first year in 2018 that from Thanksgiving through New Year's, we focus on the nonprofits in the world. Why? Because the holidays for me is times to give and receive. And if we can learn more ways that we can give and make an impact, and sometimes that is from a financial basis, sometimes that's from an educational basis, that's a volunteer basis, then we are a winning society. And I think we can all use that in these days. So today I have an amazing guest that I have so enjoyed getting to know. Amanda Sherlip has more than 16 years of experience in the nonprofit leadership space with a broad background in education and the arts, economic development, community building, systems change, regenerational economics. I could go on and on and on. Amanda has a master's degree from Columbia University in fundraising management. And more than anything now, she is the lead in the organization of Hands Across the Sea. And that's handsacrossthesea.org. Amanda, thank you for joining me here today on Her Success Story.
Ivy, I am so happy to be with you.
So let's start a little bit from the beginning and about you. Why the nonprofit space? What led you here? You had a strong background in the performing arts. So where was that whole transition for you?
I think that there's the underlying reality that at some point in time, people in the performing arts become aware of the fact that they are in the nonprofit sector. They just didn't know it. So that's one aspect, is that when you're in the arts, you wind up either being somebody who is receiving through philanthropy under a nonprofit system in a way that results in either your orchestra running or the performance being possible, right? The arts are philanthropically supported. The other side of my background leading me to the sector is that my family were immigrants, and they were war refugees, and I grew up from the youngest age that I can really recall, understanding that so much of what has made my life possible is related to global partnership and understanding the complexities of the world, which naturally brings you to understanding what philanthropy does, which means, love of humankind. So I think I was always, a systems change, philanthropically minded person who then one day woke up and realized that I was working in the industry as a program person.
So in this, share a little bit of how you got into this, and then what brought you to the organization you're part of now, Hands Across the Sea.
Musicians. So I was a classical violinist. Musicians are people who are working in the humanities. And when you get to a certain place in your art is very closely tied to your humanitarian spirit, right? Artists are people who are connected to the human experience, who want to bring that human experience to a beautiful space that allows others to connect and transcend. And hopefully it leads to some kind of action. And I was sitting in symphony one day, and I feel like I got hit with a ton of bricks, where it finally dawned on me that as I was sitting there having all of these very intense thoughts and feelings about the world and things that troubled me and things that we might be able to do, my next thought went to, why isn't anyone doing anything about it? And I looked around me and I realized it's because that's not where their aspirations were. Their aspirations were to continue performing and to connecting with the world through that. And that awareness, I think for me, I recognized as this is a call to action. If I'm realizing that somebody needs to do something and I'm looking around me, you can't look around you. You have to look within yourself. And I have the personality and temperament that's probably better suited, no, certainly better suited for the business world than, being a performer. I'm very outspoken. And so that led me to working professionally and making that transition. And that transition was me thinking that maybe it was going to be business that would lead me into impact and social innovation, until I really understood that it was the blending of business and nonprofit that would lead me there. So I have spent the last 16, now almost 17 years working in this space where I started out doing governance with arts organizations and helping to found arts organizations and learning from that side. And when you're in there, you start getting pulled into fundraising. I was being cherry picked in every which direction to be the person on every committee that my school had. I represented my student body for arts entrepreneurship. I wound up helping to do fundraising.
You got involved in everything.
Everything. And while I was doing that, I was making a living performing and teaching. And so I fell in love with education and working directly with kids. And I started to get pulled out of performance and more into direct service. And then one day I just made the leap full time.
So Hands Across the Sea. What brought you to Hands Across the Sea now? Tell us a little bit about the organization, why this became important to you.
I hit a point in my career about 4 years ago where I felt that I needed to take my skills closer to direct service. I was working in a really large organization and we were doing global impact work, but those of us working on it were really far back and our scale was large, but we were very removed. And I had a young toddler at the time. And, when you have a young child, your life is very much about the moments and about every single decision really mattering. And I think of frontline nonprofit work as being very similar to that. And so I wanted to get back to being able to do the kind of work that allowed me to not just be in the community and listen and care, but to do something about what it was that I was receiving through that relationship with the community in terms of transformational programming, decision-making, leadership, and so on. I stumbled on an organization called Hands Across the Sea, which is where I am now. And I've been the executive director with Hands Across the Sea. This is my 4th school year. And I fell in love. I do have a background in literacy, financial literacy, education, youth, frontline, global partnership. And I'm looking at this organization and thinking, well, founder transitions fail very often.
They do. That happens to be a very true statement because it's not easy for somebody when they are the founder to transition out, and it's not easy for the next tier of leadership from the founder to transition in.
Right. So I felt very connected to the mission. And then when I recognized it was a founder transition and one that was occurring after 13 years, which is a long time.
Absolutely.
My next thought was, oh no, what if they don't make it? And I've been through so many founder transitions, and I just happen to know that that's an area that I'm good at. And a founder transition allows you to take something that's still really close to the soil and to do something really big with vision so that you can make a very large impact. So I was drawn into the mission, which is building children.
So I was going to say, let's talk about the mission and what the organization is about.
So Hands Across the Sea builds children's literacy and library programs in the Eastern Caribbean. So what drew me in was
the second you say builds children's literacy programs. I'm like, okay, how do we get involved? Because that is our the foundation of our next generation.
Yeah. I was drawn in by the immediacy of impact that would be made. Yes, this mission exists because there are children in these places who don't have books and library services. So, as a nonprofit does, they made a solution. And there are few things that strike me so deeply as children's education and literacy.
Agreed.
And then there's, other basic necessities like anti-hunger, right? And child safety. These are the kinds of things that I can't sleep at night knowing that there are things that we can do, but we turn a blind eye. So literacy is such an important aspect of whole person development, whole person health. And I was privileged enough to have books and literacy be a priority. That was a decision made by my family growing up. But what would I have done without the library? What would I have done without those books and those resources? And it's not just about learning how to read. It's learning how to find yourself in other stories. It's learning how to identify and problem solve and think. It's learning how to imagine. And I found this organization during COVID at a time where it was clear that people were losing their ability to connect with one another. How are children who are isolated going to even have an opportunity to build and imagine and process? And books give all that. So I dove in head first.
What has you seen in the 4 years you've been leading this charge? What are you seeing? What are you learning?
When you give a child a book that they connect with, it changes their life. So you can use your own child as an example for it. But when we go into the field and we work with children and we see what happens after they finally find text that they can connect with, is the floodgates open. So what's really stuck with me is sometimes we'll do handover ceremonies and you would really think that you just gave children a new car when you show them the books and then you tell them that they can go and read those books. And then you also tell them they can borrow those books and bring them home and read them there as well. And it's like everything fades away for them. Or when they start to share with you what those books helped them. I mean, often we don't have a dry eye because the children are sharing things that are so deeply locked away in them, and they now have words and context to relate with it. And all it takes is enough great books and enough care. And care means showing up, helping children to find the right book, not making it a performance-driven thing. Right. So you don't have to be reading at this level. You have to be reading things that are helping you to be able to take content in, connect. Watching them transform through that process is so humbling. And it just takes a little to do so much.
And that's, you took the words right out of my mouth. It doesn't take much. It doesn't, we think we have to move mountains in order to see results, but it's all the baby steps. It's the little things. It's the gift of a book, the gift of being able to read it, enjoy it, take it to their family, bring it back to the library and take out another one. And, and then they can go back and then reread it. And that sharing and gift forward is so big and so important. And I just truly believe literacy in all of our children, for all children, is such a cornerstone for growth in our society. Okay, so I have to ask you something else. So you've been in this nonprofit world a good long time now. Anything surprise you in this journey of, as you transition from your life as a performer and a teacher to the leader and spearhead and now an executive director in the nonprofit world? Has there been, what surprises, or have there been surprises?
I am hard to surprise.
I love that.
I I think I think there are some, so there's the positive things that might fall under the category of surprise, and then the negative things, right? The things that really strike me. One of the things that strikes me, every November, I call donors as a part of Giving Tuesday to thank them and ask, I speak to donors all year long, but at this time is when I take consolidated time to thank and also ask them for renewed support, increased support. And one of the things that takes me in the end of year is so hard for a nonprofit leader. And the people I speak with are so kind and so excited to give. And, the years and the work can beat down on you at times. And when you speak to people who are invested in your mission, and you get to speak to so many people who have different socioeconomic backgrounds and politics and faith and ideology, and yet they all represent somebody who loves so well that they want to share that love in the world, and they believe in how you're going about it, and they want to know more, and they can do something about it. It re-inspires a lot of the work. So that every year that surprises me, even though I expect it. There's so much enthusiasm and excitement for how can I give? What can I do to help? Then there's the other side that surprises me, which is, and it often goes hand in hand with those who give less, the pessimism. There's so much pessimism around, and there's so much skepticism around, well, how do I know that this? What's really happening with this? How do I know this? And yet, we're all audited, organizations above a certain budget are audited, right? These financials and the reports are all laid bare, but there is such a desire to kind of view nonprofits through the lens of what it is we've learned with certain, corporate dynamics, which is, what are you doing with all of this money? Well, we don't have shareholders. We have the IRS that we report to, right? We have donors we report to, and the donors make that choice to give again. And, our stories are so laid bare. It's surprising. It's surprising how confrontational some still feel around the nonprofit sector. And yet we do so much good at such a decreased cost. And it's a choice if you want to opt in, right? You choose if you want to give and support it. And so my hope is always that, if somebody doesn't believe in a mission, they just step aside and look at a different one.
Yeah. So what tips, advice would you share with other people thinking to getting into the nonprofit space, wanting to get more involved in nonprofits, like saying, okay, you know what? I've been listening to this series and I haven't done much, or I've been listening and I've done this and that, but I think I could do a little bit more. What types of piece of advice for our listeners would you share forward from the leadership level as well as for the basic community?
I think that a lot of stock is put in mission alignment where it belongs in values alignment.
Ooh, that is brilliant. Mission alignment and value. Well, I'll rephrase this. Value alignment trumps mission alignment.
I believe so. A mission is more of a legal matter. A mission is more of understanding what revenue is allowed to go towards, right? So this is what and a mission exists in different iterations. So there's your mission that exists on a legal basis. Then there's your mission in terms of how do you iterate that mission in communication. So our mission is building children's libraries and literacy programs. But how it is that we actualize that mission is a reflection of our values. And so there are little tiny details that touch on that. And then there are the very big things. So first of all, on the big things, and I will always stand behind this, we pay equitable wages to our employees. And the idea that nonprofits should not pay equitable wages is so dismissive of the value of what the work is doing. And it's also bad business because low wages results in low retention of employees. And low retention of employees means loss of knowledge, or if you're dealing with fundraising, you're dealing with loss of relationship management. So much of what we do is because people have been on a journey with us and they see change happening. But that happens by building trust. These little things are the big things, and people deserve the wages to take care of themselves. You can't ask someone to take care of someone else, but you don't even pay them enough to take care of themselves. That's how we're perpetuating burnout. We're not looking to be martyrs. We're looking to spread resources and grow value for society. On the small side, which isn't small, we don't donate used books. We purchase brand new books, and a library in the Eastern Caribbean is going to look like a library in the US. Although what's a little more sad is it probably looks more like what a children's bookshelf in their bedroom in the US looks like, right? Like in the US, we have our own library collections at home for our children. If you hop on social media, you'll see a mom every day saying, I've got this lot of books. My kids are all grown up. Who would like these? Where we work, children won't see those books unless they're publicly available. And we don't want to send the message to the children we're working with that what they get is the thing that we're done with. And instead, that as a value has resulted in children, first of all, looking at themselves in a different way. And also, children in the US and in the Caribbean, we're finding they're talking to each other and they're like, I read that same book, and they're just now relating as humans because they're equal humans. And now they have the resources to be able to connect with one another. So you could go on and on about values, but 4 organizations can be working on a similar mission, and maybe all 4 or some or most of them are doing great work. But the way they're going about it really matters when you're thinking about how do you want to give and participate, because maybe it doesn't align with your values. And how do you want to be a part of a staff? Don't lose faith in a mission just because a value system of an organization didn't match yours.
I love that. Amanda, how can our listeners lean in, learn more about you, about the mission and vision and values of Hands Across the Sea?
Our values should be apparent through the way we're living. And so, we're not pumping out value statements. We're pumping out work and programs that all reflect our values. And I think that although it pales in keeping up with what we're doing programmatically, the best way or the easiest way to stay on top of that is our blog. And so if you go to Hands Across the Sea, it's SEA.org, and you go onto our blog, reading through those, I think, paints the picture of different real things happening every day. Now, we're in over 900 schools in 6 countries. So you can imagine any variation of what's going on in one scenario might look the same or different elsewhere. Following us on social media, our handle is @hands_C. We're not to be confused with the T Sampler or the John Philip Sousa March. And so those will be online as well. Our website, it's hard to, everybody has this problem, right? Hard to keep a website up to date. Your blog is a little better, but our website is a beautiful place. All of our stories are very real. I know what's going on in any school at any moment in time. this is very personal. For me, I have a LinkedIn. It's /in/Amanda Sherlip. And I have a bio on the website. My LinkedIn is where I stay active.
Awesome. And, listeners, do not panic. All of those links will be in our notes. So you can just, if you're like, oh, wait, what was that spelling? Just scroll down, click the links, and check it out. Anybody here who has a heart around children's literacy, we move it forward one book at a time, one child at a time. So it's not that hard to learn and show up. Amanda, thank you so much for showing up today and for sharing about yourself as well as the mission of Hands Across the Sea.
Thank you, Ivy.
And listeners, I close the show the same way every time. Take a moment, take a deep breath, and identify what was your one takeaway from today. What was the one thing that was meaningful, important? Write it down if it's in your phone, if it's on a piece of paper, and define one action that you can take that is important to you. And we know as we continue to take those actions, we will all grow. Thanks again, Amanda.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity.
And viewers and listeners, see you next time.